Welcome to this Huddersfield Caribbean Heritage Virtual Walk, which we have produced as part of Black History Month in collaboration with Discover Huddersfield. We want to remember and celebrate the Caribbean community's important contribution to Kirklees. Some of today's event was created in advance by turning Huddersfield Local Studies and Reference Library into a kind of a recording studio with careful social distancing, of course. Lorna and I from the library and the three presenters are here today, though, and we'll be happy to respond to any questions or comments halfway through and at the end of the virtual walk. We will use Google Earth alongside old photographs to help describe the walk, and there is also a special piece of archive film footage to watch out for, so stay with us. We'd love your feedback, and you are welcome to email us at the address on the screen now. And you can also comment on YouTube if you are logged in with a Google ID or on Facebook. And now over to Lorna, who will introduce our distinguished speakers.
Hello, it's now my great pleasure to introduce you to our three local presenters for this virtual walk. Natalie Pinnock-Hamilton was born in Jamaica and brought up in Deaton, and so is a member of one of the first black families in Huddersfield. And she and her siblings were some of the first black children to attend schools in the area. And she was the first at Deaton Secondary School. Natalie's background is in education, law, and community development. And over the years, she's been involved in a plethora of activities and organisations. A founder member of the Sade Lock Housing Association and the Hudawi Cultural Center, and involved from the development stage of the Forget-Me-Not Children's Trust Hospice. Natalie was also the first non-executive director of the then Calderdale and Huddersfield Health Authority and of the Government Health and Social Care Task Force, contributing to the developing the carers strategy. She was chief executive of Rastrick Youth Forum, a teacher and a school governor. And then as a result of her contributions to the community, both locally and in Leeds, where she worked for the City Council, Natalie was awarded an MBE in 2000. Denzil Nurse, here next to Natalie, was born in Barbados and arrived in Huddersfield in 1963. He worked for 23 years in both psychiatric and general nursing in Wakefield, Halifax, Dewsbury and Huddersfield, before having a change of direction in 1986 and becoming a community worker, principally, but not solely, with the African Caribbean community. And he's a member of the Huddersfield Caribbean Association and the Honeys Diabetes Support Group, which Denzil chairs, has recently been awarded the Charity of the Year Award in the ACAP Windrush Achievement Awards. Our other presenter, Heather Norris-Nicholson, has taught and written about aspects of cultural identity, visual history and memory for many years. Her work on local community initiatives includes the Windrush Anniversary Garden and the Caribbean Heritage Trail, and projects with Kirklees Local TV include Windrush the Years After and Huddersfield and the NHS, A Caribbean Connection. Heather, you and the others first did this walk a few years ago, did you?
Yes, we all did the walk for the first time in 2016. It was devised collaboratively and over many months to raise the visibility of Huddersfield's African Caribbean community's history. We created the walk as part of Discover Huddersfield's Town Trail series.
That sounds great. I'm just going to show you a map of the walk just now and share a view of it, because if I zoom in slightly, I'll give you an overview before we begin. The walk's going to start at St George's Square and go along onto Westgate and then up Trinity Street here. And then it's going to come back down through Greenhead Park. If you were doing the walk for real, that would be a lovely walk through the park. And down onto, I think it's Greenhead Road, which used to be where the Princess Royal Maternity Hospital was, now the Princess Royal Health Centre. Then we're going to walk down into the Springwood area along this Park Avenue to near Springgrove School, then down also through past Merton Street, Springwood Street, across the Ring Road to near the bus station. And we'll have one stop near where there used to be a place called Sparrow Park. Some people might remember. We're going to walk down through town to where Venn Street still is, although much changed, and then along here onto the Ring Road and across onto Great Northern Street, and we're going to finish off at the Hudawi Center there. So I'll stop sharing that.
That's great. So are we ready for action?
We're ready for our first stop. So we're going to move into a little video footage to start with.
Here we are at St. George's Square, our first port of arrival in Huddersfield. It's at the train station where most of us would have arrived on, and we're now stepping out of St. George's Square into a world that is strange for most of us as pioneers. It would have been damp and cold and foggy, and it's a far cry from what we left in the Caribbean. Nevertheless, we are here. We have to make the best of the world that we have, and that's what we intend to do.
The railway soon had double significance for many of those families and individuals, both as an employer and also as landlord, because of how much land they owned in certain parts of Huddersfield that was soon to become associated with very early migration of the pioneers who had come in response to that request for labour. And direct labour recruitment from the Caribbean boosted the newly nationalised industries, and including British Railways and later called British Rail, and other public services in Clement Attlee's post-war Labour government. But thinking of the Labour, let's look at the statue here in the middle of the square. Huddersfield-born Prime Minister Harold Wilson, in office between 1964 and 70, and then again 74 to 1976, was responsible for the first piece of legislation in the UK concerned with race relations. It was concerned with offering legal protection against discrimination in public places. And it was the first of a raft of laws that came in over the next decade, adjusting and offering greater protection to the prejudice and discrimination that many of the newcomers and their families faced. What we're now going to do is take a turning up from the top corner of the square and head up towards Westgate. So be careful of the cobbles as we walk up to join Westgate. And here we are now, standing in front of the Brian Jackson Centre with New North Road Baptist Church just to one side, and behind us, a public house.
The public house was, it's called the Old Hat Pub. It was one of the welcoming points for us as foreigners. It's the area that held out a hand of friendship for within a hostile environment. Discrimination was rife. People didn't want to be associated with foreigners, but this pub was a welcome point.
Here we are outside the Brian Jackson House, which houses the Yorkshire Children's Centre, and across from it, New North Road Baptist Church. The Yorkshire Children's Centre, formerly the National Children's Centre, moved here from Longroyd Bridge in the 70s. Central to these early initiatives for children's well-being, such as the Saturday Club and childminding, was Hazel Wigmore. Through her outreach, the nearby New North Road Baptist Church gained a reputation for welcoming Caribbean newcomers. You can imagine coming from a place like the Caribbean, as Denzil said, it was cold and damp. People weren't aware of their surroundings, how to get help, how to access housing. And Hazel Wigmore was there to guide them through the processes and their surroundings and the way of life in Huddersfield. So she played a big part in welcoming, accepting, and making the newcomers feel at ease.
If we just continue our walk a little bit further, we'll be able to see New North Road Baptist Church. Here it is in its current position on the edge of the ring road. But let's just look at the picture and see what was there before. Okay, this is taken in the 1960s and an important landmark at the time. If you look back, when you have a chance, to the photograph of St. George's Square, I think you'll just see the spire of the Baptist Church popping up behind some of the other buildings. But this building was not to last. It went along with many other buildings during the redevelopment of Huddersfield as part of the creation of the ring road. And here's a picture showing the surroundings already being knocked down and the church standing as a sort of island amongst the debris that was soon to be cleared before the ring road went through. What we're now going to do is cross that ring road. Just be careful of the traffic. And we're going to head out of town a little up towards Trinity Street. And we're going to continue along Trinity Street. Just imagine all the chaos. And also from these aerial views, what you can see is how many houses must have been knocked down. And that's going to be part of a saga we come back to, that the housing areas into which some of the early arrivals came were gradually demolished, and has led over the decades to an outward movement for many families from the original African Caribbean descent community. But here we are outside the credit union building on Trinity Street.
In the Caribbean, credit unions were very popular. People used it as their savings. And it goes without saying that once they arrived here, credit unions started. In Huddersfield, there were about 5 people who started a credit union, and one of them was my dad, who was involved with the credit union. I still have a book, a journal with all the members who joined, all the people who loans were given out to. So that's a very special book. So they developed the credit union initiative here in Huddersfield. It offered financial help and advice. It fostered resilience at a time when racism was widespread. No Blacks Here signs prompted many families to share rented accommodation until they could afford to buy their own homes. The credit union eventually bought this Victorian building, and it became an important educational and social centre.
I'd like to share my contributions to about the credit union, because I was one of the first members of the credit union. And at that particular time, it would be a haven for people who haven't got any homes and who would like to build their own home. And the credit union, as Natalie said, offer loans and savings and help people to save for their for the first house. At that particular time, the banks didn't want to know. Nobody wanted to help the person to get their security that they need, and that's where the credit union stepped in. I was wrong at that time. If I was a member of the credit union, I had a part in the credit union where we did a training for the credit union at I think it was called the Northern College. We would go there to have the training for the credit union. So I was part of that credit union, and I experienced the help and support that is given to countless of us in those early days.
Thanks, Denzil. I think what we get from that stop is, an example of the resilience and the self-help that members of the emerging African Caribbean community offered, just to ensure that they could survive and combat the hostility around them. So with that in mind, we're going to head back down the Trinity Street and cut across into Greenhead Park, that wonderful green space behind, that of course has its own historical links with the Caribbean at an earlier time through the connections of the family that owned Greenhead Hall, but that is another story that we'll leave for now. What we will come and consider is how this park played a role in the Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon activities of the pioneer families after they came out of church wearing their Sunday best.
Yes, our Sunday best was nice to be able to show off to a family back home in the Caribbean. Remember that at that particular time, we had no social media, we had no Zoom, we had no WhatsApp. And the only thing that we had to connect us with the family back home was just to go into the park on a Sunday afternoon in our Sunday best and show off via the community photographer at the time, and then have those photographs posted back to the Caribbean. It gave the family back home a feeling of well-being for us, and that we were doing well, and that's what we wanted to portray to our families back home, and that's what was done.
I remember as a child, my dad taking us on a Sunday, all dressed up, to Greenhead Park, and we did this quite regularly, to the conservatory, I think that's what they called it then, where there were so many tropical plants and flowers, and we enjoyed so much going round with our dad, looking at all the plants in the conservatory, which is now a restaurant, I believe.
I'd just like to draw attention to the picture that we've got superimposed on the Google Earth image for this stop. I don't know if you can look at it or even make it a little bit bigger, but it's identifying a grand carnival and festival of racial friendship, and it was found in the local studies library. It dates from the early 1980s. I think there's an echo there of the handshake between white and black hands that was part of the logo of the Commission for Racial equality that had been set up some years earlier. So, but it's a reminder that in the 80s there were various attempts to promote intercultural and cross-cultural harmony and good relations, and a lot of endeavors at community level, and also supported by local funding. So in the history of Greenhead Park is quite a story of carnival gatherings, this being one. Of course, the best known ones come later in the 80s with the celebration of Huddersfield's Carnival and taking its grand finale in the park. So for many years, arriving in the park after an arduous, exhausting, sometimes quite hot journey up from its starting place on the other side of town, the Hudawi Center, a point we will come to much later in our talk today. Hello, well, we're going to leave Greenhead Park now and head back along Greenhead Road towards the right, and we'll cross over and just stop looking across at what used to be called the Princess Royal Maternity Hospital. Now, this is important for various reasons within Huddersfield's Caribbean connections, and I'm going to hand over to Denzil to pick up the story, please.
Yes, it was significant for the Caribbean community in that it was at that particular time the main maternity hospital, and that is where the early pioneers and family had their babies. It serves a significant point for our people, because it was the first time Black people were going in to have babies in hospital, and it provided a curiosity for the nurses that was there. Probably never seen a Black child born, and I remember rumors have it that when the babies were born, the nurses would check to see if they had tails, see what color they were, and whether they were any different to the white community, and they were. The images that was described to us was one of a curious foreign person being born, and as I say, you could imagine what sense of curiosity that brought.
Denzil, I just wonder whether before we leave the hospital, you could say a little bit again relating to very direct experience, or about the role of people from the Caribbean in helping with the acute staffing shortage of the newly set up National Health Service in the 1940s, and a staffing shortage that indeed continued. It pre-existed the setting up of the National Health Service, and it certainly continued. And you were involved in one of the direct recruitment drives. Would you like to share that story?
Yes. I came in 1963. I went straight into nursing at Stanley Wright Hospital in Wakefield. Then before moving on to Stores Hall Hospital, and in between those two era, I did a secondment to do general training. So I was into all aspects of nursing at the time. And things had developed from there. In those early days, there were a lot of hostility, as in in the wider community or wider society, it was like that in nursing. People didn't want you to look after their parent, and even the patients didn't want you to look after them. Even though you came with a helping hand, it was thrown back into your face, literally. So those were the hostile environments that we had to go through. The laws of the land didn't help. When you reach out to ask for help from the authorities, you got little back in return. You really did have to fight for every right and justice that you needed, that you think you needed. So those were the days. Things have moved on considerably from that blatant type of situation to one now where the laws have helped a bit, but you still have the racism and the discrimination subtly done.
Thanks, Denzil, for sharing those very personal stories. I think we're now going to take our walkers further along towards Springwood Avenue. Now, Springwood Avenue goes through an area known as Springwood that was a very, very important early settlement area for newcomers. And out of that, several things emerged. One, an international club. Two, a school that gained a reputation for working with children from overseas. And three, an initiative that brings us right up to the present. I'm going to pass over to Natalie first to share some of the stories of that area.
Right, we're now in the Springwood area, Springwood Avenue and Water Street. And this is an area which saw maybe the majority of settlers from the Caribbean settling into. I know my own parents, they lived on Upper George Street in the 50s, and they settled in a house which was owned by my auntie and her husband, and that was one of multiple settlers, multiple occupants. There were about 5 families living in that house. It was a big house, still there, but I just can't envisage so many families living in one house, but they seem to manage very well. So children from Caribbean families attended the local school there, Spring Grove, and as Heather says, under Trevor Bergin's leadership, gained a national reputation for its commitment to educational opportunity and diversity. Nearby, Springwood Adult Education Centre, which is right at the top of the road, and it was a reception centre and a petition for local racial harmony. And as Heather said, here they coordinated the international club, which I didn't know about at the time. So Springwood is a very important area and very important place for newcomers arriving into Huddersfield.
So we're back now in the studio, having our half-time break from the video production, and we don't seem to have any questions that have come through into the studio so far. But I wonder if our presenters want to say if what they feel about what's happened so far in the talk. We've stopped partway through the Springwood area section.
I'm quite impressed actually, because I wondered, how is it going to work? How are we going to do a walk effectively by just sitting in our homes, a virtual walk? But I think it's worked really well, because we are visiting the sites that we did on the actual walk, and I think we're probably adding more to it as well as we go along. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with it.
We're going to have at the beginning of this section a wonderful bit of video which has been shared with us by the Yorkshire Film Archive. It was taken by a John Murray who worked in the audiovisual unit at Leeds University, and he was also involved with Huddersfield Royal Infirmary's hospital radio. He used leftover bits of film. Sorry, I'm going to share my screen now with the bit that I've got. And he used bits of film to make other recordings like this one here. Let me try and find the second part of the trail.
At a time when people are queuing up in the main street of Huddersfield to sign a paper in support of Enoch Powell, it's nice to find one place which is definitely in favour of racial harmony. Here we are at the Springwood Adult Education Centre, and tonight is the first night of what we hope will become a great success as the Huddersfield International Club. What proportion of people in Huddersfield are immigrants?
About 10% of the whole population, and that brings roughly about 10 to 12,000 people. That includes Indians, Pakistanis, and the West Indians.
And how are they getting on at the moment with the locals?
At the moment, probably is the key phrase. Unfortunately, the recent events following Enoch Powell's speech have really created some ill feelings and misunderstandings probably on either side, but generally speaking, I should think this borough has got a very peaceful coexistence type of multiracial society.
Another part of Springwood is the Merton Street area, where many early Caribbean families lived, as previously said. Some in the railway houses on Water Street, which is adjacent to the red brick ventilation tower, which became a popular meeting place back in the day. A lot of elderly gentlemen would sit and they'd discuss and they'd reminisce, and it became known as the Houses of Parliament, as its benches were a place to discuss the current issues. Nearby Buller Brothers, the shop supplied Caribbean groceries and probably was one of the first shops that did so. Bath Street was another residential focal point, while pioneering Caribbean businesses, including Bouncers Records, Blacker Road, Caribbean Restaurant, Paco Center, Rosemary's, later became Chic, and Donald Wong, also known as Chin, photographic studio. So there were lots of other businesses happening at the same time. Now, Donald Wong is a Jamaican Chinese gentleman. He opens his mouth and everybody think, what? He has got such a strong Jamaican accent. He was photographer, a well-known photographer, and he would take all the pictures of all the events and activities in the community.
While we're in this area, it's just worth pointing out that we're right on the edge of a conservation area. And that's why, although the colour of the houses look different, they are recognisable. We can go up these streets today and just sort of see how they are transformed. The Punjab stores is still there. Water Street that we're looking at here in this picture is, still recognisable, and it was almost not the case. It was almost knocked down, but there was a sort of change in attitudes that ensured these sorts of buildings were recognised for their splendid early 19th century architecture, and they were preserved. The school at Spring Grove that we mentioned earlier is just about visible from the newly created Windrush anniversary garden that is in this image. And if you sit on one of the benches in the garden, you'll be able to see Springgrove School. It's a Victorian building with a fascinating history, but it also has a really important history for the children of the early Caribbean families. Its head teacher, Trevor Burgeon, he was there between 1958 and 1968. They thrived in a caring environment. He later became an educational advisor for Kirklees, and his staff gained a national reputation for its commitment to providing educational opportunities, and it was one of the first schools in the country to identify over half of its pupils from non-white backgrounds. So really important little pocket of Huddersfield here, and it's for these various reasons that the newly created Windrush Anniversary Garden is taking place, is taking shape during 2020. I wonder if Denzil could share a little bit more of that story.
The name that the pioneers gave it, which was the Houses of Parliament, and the fact that people gather around and discuss all the wiles of the community, it was felt that it should be commemorated. And the three of us had put our ideas together and asked for that space around the tower to be preserved as commemorating the Windrush experience. And that is how it was born. We approached the people who own the land, and it was between either British Rail or the Kirklees Council, and that space was agreed that we should put that garden together. The garden is open to the community as a community garden to be cared for by the community with the help from the local authorities. But we need to have that ownership of that garden so that it shows and is passed on as a legacy to those early pioneers.
I think probably we should move on in case our walkers are getting tired. And let's head back towards the centre of town. So we're going to head downhill back towards the Ring Road. We're going to go past the Elim Pentecostal church that was just below the air shaft, the ventilation tower of the Windrush Anniversary Garden, and head back towards the bus station and stop just for a moment to contemplate what was there before buses came in and out on this very, very busy site. And it was, if you look at the photograph, really looking rather different back in the late 1960s, as this photograph shows. Who's going to talk about Sparrow Park?
Yeah, well, I can start off. Sparrow Park, as Heather said, is now where the bus station is, and in that space was the club. Shalimar was its name, but because it was in the area known as Sparrow Park, it became known as Sparrow Park, and everybody referred to it as that. So there've been quite a few clubs in the past, but this one was probably one of the first because when people first came from the Caribbean, because they liked their music, they liked to dance, there was just nowhere for them to go because they were not welcome in the local clubs. My dad would tell a story about having to go to Dewsbury Town Hall because it seems for some reason they were more welcome there. So a group of them would go over to Dewsbury Town Hall where they would have dances. And the girls loved them, loved the Caribbean men because they had so much rhythm and they could dance. And of course, the men didn't like this at all. They didn't think, they weren't happy that the girls were preferring to dance with men like my dad rather than themselves, but they just didn't have the rhythm. So that's what happened. So they decided to set up clubs, and this was one of them.
Thanks, Natalie. What we're going to do from the Sparrow Park position of, where the bus station now is, we're just going to go slightly further down Westgate and look at this old photograph that was unearthed in the local studies collection just recently. It's a lovely image, don't you think, of the 1968 Huddersfield Borough centenary celebration. And I think the float's theme is the United Nations. And so children from diverse backgrounds, possibly even from the Springgrove School, are taking part on this float as part of a significant event in the history of Huddersfield. And here it is on a recognizable corner of Westgate, and the opening image for the virtual tour showed another float. Here it is again, so you can enjoy the Steel Orchestra on board, the Steady Soul Brothers banner, and various people visible along the road. And I think very faintly, if you peer at this picture carefully, you see not only the really quite dark buildings, this is all prior to clean air legislation, but you can also see the overhead wires for the trolley buses actually going through this part of town. We're going to leave those rhythms and imagine the festive atmosphere, and we're going to head down to another part of town that I think probably could be, in many people's memories, even noisier and even more special, and that is Ben Street. And here we are looking down on Ben Street from a rather unusual position. You can just see it in that previous Google Air image, but here we have an actual sort of street side view. Judging from the cars, we're putting it into the early 1960s. Somebody verifies that date for us kindly. So we think it's about 1963. You can see the Empire here on that building, and here is what was once the heart of the Ben Street music scene. Who's going to share some of those stories?
Well, I think 1963, it was still the Empress Ballroom, I think, and at one stage the new theatre. I'm not sure what years that was, but then it became the Cleopatra's nightclub. It had a few name changes, but I think when it closed, it was Cleopatra's. And the thing about the Cleopatra's was that it was a safe place. It was a cultural expression, people expressing their identity. There was support. It was a cross-generational place for people to go, because it wasn't just young people, but it was, our parents and maybe even grandparents. People all used to go and mix together. And there you'd hear the music, the reggae, soul, R&B, but also it attracted many, many top artists from Jamaica. And of course, local as well, and national. But if you name an artist, they'll say, oh yes, came to Ben Street. And even though it was called Cleopatra's, it became known as Venn Street because it was on Venn Street. So we'd have people like Jimmy Cliff, who came, Gregory Isaacs. I remember seeing Gregory Isaacs, who's passed away, but all the top artists have appeared at Venn Street. And it was so sad when it was demolished. It was like all our youth had gone with that, because we grew up there. Young people used to have Sunday youth club, Sunday disco, which we used to go to, and just disappeared. And every time you walk past now, you think about Venn Street and all the good memories.
It's a reminder, isn't it, of how important people's memories are, that we can lose the buildings, but holding on to some of these memories ensures that these valuable histories just are passed on, even when the places they are associated with and the sounds they are associated with to some extent have disappeared. I think in the case of Venn Street, though, it has played such an important part within the local community that there are very, very many memories, and there have been attempts, there have been very successful events to reimagine and to celebrate and recall that that festive atmosphere and the significance of music at a time when identity was challenged in so many different ways by the politics of the time, and music in places like Venn Street became a part of the act of solidarity and also part of an expression of that resilience that helped people through the day-to-day that often wasn't anything like as nice. But we're going to move on now, and we're going to cross the ring road. So again, just be careful of the traffic. And we're going to head down to a little bit of town that survived almost as an island of older buildings amongst the demolition associated with the clearance to make way for the ring road in the late 60s and early 70s. And we're going to focus on the church that is now known as the New Testament Church of God at 8A Great Northumberland Street. You can see from the splendid facade with its lovely stained glass window that it's a former Victorian building. In fact, it's a former congregational church, but with that sweeping away of the houses from this part of town, the congregation gradually went. It was left vacant, and after many years of faith communities looking for a permanent home, after years of house meetings and so on, so the New Testament Church of God found a home here.
The church was, the New Testament Church of God was one of those significant buildings and significant churches in the community where it performed a whole range of activities for the community: marriages, funerals, births, all that sort of, and it provided a focal point for people of faith. A number of other churches black churches are recognized in the community, but this one was one that was most recognized. I think inside the foyer of this church is a roll call of members of the Black community who have served in the forces, the services. And if you go into that church, you'll see the names. It is the one place in Huddersfield, if I can remember, where you will find a roll call of Black service members. And that has been preserved in there as a legacy to the Black community.
Shall we move on then to the Hudawi Center, which is further down from New Testament Church of God? Now, the Hudawi Center is seen as the cultural and spiritual home of the Caribbean community, because they started holding activities in the old building prior to the new building being put up. So Hudawi, many people don't know what Hudawi stands for, but it's Hudawi is Huddersfield African and West Indian Center, and it symbolizes the local struggle and endeavor of the community. It's a school building that was made redundant, and by using urban aid money, the community and self-help, we were able to transform it into the Hudawi Center. And this was done by the Caribbean Association and a youth group that I was involved in called the Black Unity, which got the funding. The center was constructed, the new center as it is now was constructed following a fire which destroyed the building, which originally was Beaumont Street School. And this was in 1993. And that was a great loss, because the old building, even though it was dilapidated and falling apart, is where we had our youth clubs, where things happened, and a lot did happen there. At Hudawi, it's also the starting point for the Huddersfield Carnival, and the venue where we would be this month celebrating the Black History Month showcase, which would bring lots of events, lots of activities together to showcase on the last Saturday in October. But obviously this will not be happening because of COVID. So it does hold a lot of history for the community. And as such, it is seen as the cultural home of the Caribbean community.
And I think that stop really concludes our virtual walk today. We've only scraped the surface of the enormous range of stories and places associated with Huddersfield's African Caribbean communities past. Those stories are continuing to be gathered, and we hope that there will be people who are watching this today who will find ways to contribute. But I'd like to say thanks. It's been wonderful taking part in this, and I'd like to say thank you to the Kirklees Libraries for making it possible and inviting us to take part in this virtual walk for Black History Month 2020.
Hello again. We're all back in the studio, just here to answer any questions people might have. We've had some comments that I could feed back to everybody. Hester Dunlop says, I didn't know about what the credit unions and how important they were, so they've learnt about them. Beverly Norris says she's loving the personal reflections, and Hester says, me too, Sparrow Park sounds like a great venue. And somebody says that their piano tuner recognised that their piano came from the Caribbean Club in Sparrow Park. It'd be interesting to see where it's gone to. We should do a photograph of it.
I'm just thinking what an amazing journey that has been. And I've just got a question to ask Natalie and Denzil. The community has made so many proud achievements and built such a excellent legacy. What about the second and third generations? Has there been any community spirit, any interest amongst them to promote the Caribbean culture?
I think not enough. We need to do more. because otherwise, if we don't, it's going to die out and people aren't going to know what came before. So this is why we need to do more of this. We need to involve the community. We need to keep our Black History Month showcase going and use it as an opportunity for people to not only take part but to come and watch. I think we just have to try harder, because at the moment we're not, I have to admit, we're not trying hard enough to get the younger people engaged.
I think a program like this would stimulate young people, because they haven't got any imagination of how things were. But if they see the distance that we have traveled and the lessons that they need to learn, then I think they will be in a better place to build on it, build on what we've done, because it's an evolution. You know, things must change and must change for the better. So I think this is a program that can be built on for future generations. At least my children and grandchildren will see the distance that I've traveled and the struggles that I've had to, and most of us have had to make in order to get to this point, and the struggles continue.
I think last year we had Venn Street reunion and a community history exhibition, and that showed the history going back so many years, 50s, during the 50s as well. And a lot of young people attended that, and people were saying, oh, that's my mum, that's my dad, or my grandma. And I think more of that's needed. But we need to preserve, it's another thing, we need to preserve our history so that we can archive things and use them in the future, use them for events such as the reunions and such as other historical events that we would like to organise.
Thank you very much to everybody. It's been a pleasure to have you here in the studio and to talk to you. And thanks to everybody for watching. We've got one more comment here. Mary Poulton says, it's been great, told me so much about things I didn't understand. Well, I definitely learned one interesting thing, which was, you know, that Huddersfield had his own Houses of Parliament. So that's one thing I'll be taking away from this talk.
Before we finish, Frank, we should tell people that they can find out more after the video. Underneath the video, there'll be a link to the Google Earth tour, won't there? And the video will stay on if you want to share it with other friends. It's the Google Earth tour allows you to explore the streets at your own pace and see a few more photographs, and it has a lot of links to videos that you can watch online. So KLTV has several fascinating videos, including one about Greenhead Hall and the slavery connection that Heather mentioned, and one about, it's got videos of the Deaton High School and the Venn Street reunion. So that one Natalie was mentioning at Venn Street, and it's got carnival footage. And of course, the Yorkshire Film Archive that kindly let us share their video today have some amazing films about Huddersfield, as also does the BFI player. So you can explore more at your leisure online, as well as books in the library.
So thanks to everybody for watching, and thank you to our speakers who joined us today. And we would like to say bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching.